Welcome to the council meeting of Town of Kirkland Lake for April the 16th, 2019. We'll have a moment of silence. Approval of the agenda.
I have a motion that's moved by Councillor Dennis Perrier, seconded by Councillor Rick Owen. The council approves the agenda for its regular meeting of April 16th, 2019 as presented.
All in favor? Unanimous. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Councillor Adams?
Yep, under section 6, Manager of Planning and Land Development, the 100th Anniversary Committee requests, being a member of the Curling Club and with the print tent, being able to, the Curling Club being able to serve alcohol and funds go to them, I'll have to sit that one out.
Duly noted, thank you. Petitions and delegations from Delshin Therapeutics. We have Janine Leslin Berglund, and Peter Petrie is here as well. Thank you for attending. And did you bring any samples with you? Gummy bears or?
Thank you so much for the invitation, and we thought perhaps this would be a well-attended meeting if we let that slip. So, first of all, good evening, Your Worship, members of council, administrative members who are here today, ladies and gentlemen. We were happy to be here to be able to present a little bit of information about our organization, who we are, and what we do. And I'm just going to change this to presentation mode if that's okay. Okay, this mouse isn't working? That's okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna go right from here. Okay. Thank you so much. So on behalf of our senior administrative team and our co-CEOs, Allison Gordon and Jeanette Vandermerel, who send their regrets for not being able to be here with you today, and of course our local team, who I'll introduce in a moment, we were thrilled to be asked to talk a little bit about our operations and the industry as a whole. So for those of you who know a little bit about us and are a little more familiar with our story, Delshin Therapeutics has been here in the city of Kirkland Lake since 2013 as a licensed producer of medical cannabis under the old ACMPR license process through Health Canada. With the rebranding of 48 North, Delshin Therapeutics then became a wholly owned subsidiary of the 48 North Cannabis Corporation, who then worked as an organization on becoming a publicly traded company. 48 North then merged in December of 2018 with a company called Good and Green out of the Brantford area in Ontario, and that merger closed on December 1st of 2018, which now means that 48 North as an organization is a publicly traded company, which is vertically integrated, and it focuses on the health and wellness of the market through the cultivation and extraction, as well as the creation of innovative, authentic brands for next generation cannabis products. So we currently have operations in 4 key areas. Of course, the lovely Kirkland Lake, which I will talk about in a minute, and I'm super excited to see what it will look like without snow on the ground. Brantford, the city of Brantford, the county of Brant, as well as our headquartered operations in Toronto. Good and Green was purchased as part of that, was merged as part of the organization last December, and as a result has now been rebranded as the Good House in the city of Brantford, as well as the Good Farm in Brant County. So the Good House itself is a 46,000 square foot indoor cultivation facility, and it's located in Brantford, Ontario, with a production capacity of roughly 2,500 kilograms of dried cannabis. The facility is set up for GMP, or good manufacturing processes, and it today produces organic cannabis for retail distribution, wholesale supply, as well as flower and oil production. 25,000 square feet of space is currently available to support pre- and post-farm production activities, which I'll talk about in a moment, that include extractions, lab activities, and manufacturing on a whole. The Good Farm, pending Health Canada approval, will be the first outdoor farm licensed in the province of Ontario and will be the largest outdoor cultivation in the world, boasting 100 acres of cannabis. Our hope here is that this will present a low-cost yet highly regulated solution for Health Canada to answer the current market demands of what's missing for the marketplace today. Cultivation is expected pending Health Canada approval to begin this year in June, and we expect to be certified by EcoCert as an organic farm later this year as well. But let's talk a little bit then about Delshin Therapeutics as a site. So for those of you who are not familiar today, we have currently 38 full-time employees, and we have 8 vacancies to fill. The facility itself is roughly 40,000 square feet of space on 800 acres of land. I'm sure some of you have probably been out that way. We, with optimization, are closer to 20,000 square feet now of growing space and roughly 10,000 square feet of processing, lab, and packaging space or shipping activities. We are licensed to cultivate and sell cannabis and cannabis extracts. And we have a supply deal today with Canopy Growth Corporation as a business-to-business wholesaler of product, if you will, as well as current contacts that we are satisfying with SQDC, which is the province of Quebec's equivalent to the Ontario cannabis stores. The business is growing and developing rapidly, and cannabis is quickly changing from a standalone dried product, which many of you see today, and becoming an ingredient in other things. And that's really the bulk of where I'd like this presentation to go, if you will. But first, before I do, I'd like to introduce the management team and the local faces that you see here, so that you have some faces that you can refer to from time to time. So I'll just ask them to wave as opposed to standing up as I introduce them. So first we have Peter Petrie, who is our general manager. Next to him, we have Johnny Marquez, who is our grow manager. In the row directly behind them, we have Carol Duke, who is our training supervisor. We have Christine LaForge, who is our HR manager. We have Khalil Thompson, who is our acting production manager. And I have a few colleagues with me also from our head office activities. We have Mike Garbowski, who's in charge of security, and Jeff Owen, who's our senior project manager and helping me develop all of these wild and wonderful projects. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the values and products and things you may not know about not only cannabis, but certainly 48 North as a company. Little known fact is that we are really, really excited about and educating people on cannabis use and the product as a whole. We are certainly eager to promote gender parity in the industry, and we do like to work with Indigenous peoples, some of whom were early investors in the company. There's a couple of examples here of the things that we do. We produce a publication called Latitude, which is meant to help inform and promote cannabis use and dispel any myths and offer great insights into the use of cannabis specifically for the female market. And we also did partner with a company called Leaf Forward to present a Female Founder Scholarship Award presented to a young woman every year to further studies and to continue to accelerate the activities of female in senior positions in this industry. The other thing that we hold true is the fact that we want to maintain some ethics around our environment and ethics around the kind of business that we operate. So one of the things that's key and integral to that is being responsibly grown cannabis, which is then also organic, which means we're not putting anything into the soil, particularly on our farm, as well as our indoor activities, that it's sun-grown, which is always going to be better for us, and that we are doing any kind of landfill diversion that we can by the use of the products that we choose or the materials that we're choosing to help grow the cannabis. One example of this certainly is the launch of the 48 North Good Farm. It will be an environmentally friendly, energy efficient, and cannabis cultivation site with only drying happening on that site and then the cannabis being removed to be processed in other places. The other things that we do also have are more than just creating cannabis. We also have some products. So we've launched a brand this year called F8 or Fate, certainly taking a play off of our name, which is meant to introduce cannabis use products or accessories, as they're commonly called, into the marketplace. We also are looking to brand products in 4 key categories. So one is the flour, which you see today in many of the dried activities that folks engage in, but extractions and oils, topicals, which would be medical grade or cosmetic grade topicals, as well as consumables. And the only thing we're concentrating on today for consumables is beverages. We want to stay away from edibles for the time being. I think our organization has figured out that there's likely not enough information for us to be able to be responsible around producing products in that area. We currently supply to the Ontario Cannabis Store, Canopy Growth Organization, like I mentioned, as well as the SQDC, which is the equivalent of the OCS in Quebec. Interestingly enough, though, in order to get all of these things done, we do need some help. And so one of the things that we're super excited about is to be able to partner with, collaborate with, work with other community partners and like-minded organizations where there can be some opportunity for not only growth, but employment. And that's really what we're here to talk to you about today, too. With those 8 vacancies, we have room and opportunity for growth. We find it difficult to compete with some of the other industries that are located here for obvious reasons. But we do have a fairly, I would call, an enjoyable climate to work in. We are currently working with Indigenous nations today. We're working with the 6 nations out of the Brantford area, as well as the Matachewan Nation here. We're looking at employment opportunities, but we're also looking at education programs to working with those organizations. We are very much interested in any kind of community partnership and community action where we can be maybe responsible for some education. And we would love to be able to add to your local economic development by inviting people to relocate here from other communities, maybe with your help in helping us build a package of what's here for folks that may be coming from some of our outlying areas to settle. So those are some of the things that we're interested in doing. But we can talk more about that later. I just want to again thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you today. Again, our company, 48 North, is branded and named after the parallel that we operate here in Northern Ontario, and we're proud to invite others to head well north. I'm Janine Lassaline Berglund, Vice President of Operations. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Councillor Avanoff?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been talking about that. So if Health Canada is actually successful in allowing outdoor cultivation, we are currently exploring those opportunities also here in Northern Ontario. We'd be foolish not to with 800 acres to play with. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the majority of the perimeter has pretty much been secured already, so those are hurdles we wouldn't have to overcome. I think, respectfully, as a Southern Ontario girl, your climate might be something that we have to work with here, and certainly the shortage of days, but I think your sunlight actually might be, certainly in the summer periods, quite apt to produce, yeah, you have longer daytime periods, we'll call it. Thank you.
I'm interested to hear, what's the trading symbol on the stock market?
It's NRTH is the trading symbol. And we have been up and down, so I will tell any of you who are newcomers to investing in the cannabis industry, if you're a person who likes to watch your stocks daily, I don't recommend investing. This is more of a long-term investment, if you will, but certainly,
No.
yeah, we've actually been quite successful in going to the public for raising. In fact, we closed a call at 25 million just a couple of weeks ago.
Yes. Well, it's nice to follow a local company to see how they're doing.
Well, and likewise, we would love for any time for, you know, a couple of members of council to come and tour the facility, and we'd be happy to engage in any relationship-related conversations, particularly in community development.
Councillor Owens?
Yeah, you said you had 8 positions open. Can you give us an idea of what those jobs are so we can give you a little free advertising here for your HR people?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we'll take, we really like to hire for value-based and teach skill, given that this is a new industry. And so we're very eager to accept anybody who's had a background, obviously, in agriculture. That that will help, but it's not a requirement. So we have open positions right now in production technology, but we do also have some open positions where we could do some recruiting in our quality department. This is a heavily regulated industry, which requires an awful lot of documentation, compliance, regular inspection, certainly quality controls in place, and so we need as many hands as possible for that. And as we move into supplying more direct product to market, help with packaging, even distilling, distillates type activity or oil extractions, we need, help on the processing side of things as well. We're open to entertain any offer.
We certainly welcome anybody that's bringing 38 jobs to Kirkland Lake and potential for a few more. So congratulations on the merger, or whatever you want to call it. And we wish you continued success. Thanks for bringing us up to date. Acceptance of minutes and recommendations.
I have a motion that is moved by Councillor Dennis Perrier, seconded by Councillor Rick Owen. The council accepts the minutes of the following meetings. The Northern College Campus Committee held February 27th, 2019. The Finance meeting held April 2nd, 2019. The regular meeting of council held April 2nd, 2019. The Economic Development Committee held April 3rd, 2019. The departmental finance budget meetings held April 4th and April 9th, 2019, and the special meeting of council held April 9th, 2019.
All in favor? Unanimous. Reports of municipal officers and communications, CAO.
We have a number of items on the agenda. The first one is a new pool warranty documentation. Councillor Owen had requested that, and we just included it in the package. Negotiation for bylaw enforcement services is the second one. We've gone out a number of times to try to recruit a bylaw enforcement capacity. What we have been looking at is how do we increase the coverage while maintaining the costs and the responsibilities that we have. In the last time that we went out for an advertisement, we advertised for individuals or firm, and a local company did put forward their name. This would be Turtle Island Protective Services. They have been in business for a while now, and they provide security as well as investigation services to a number of clientele throughout northeastern Ontario as well as elsewhere in the world. The company put up with a lot of interesting questions from staff as to how this could be done, what other examples would be out there, how would we move forward. They've answered every question that we've had, and we're bringing it forward now as a request to pass a bylaw to engage them on a one-year term. The company would be providing the services over the geographical space of Kirkland Lake. There would be 3 people that could be called upon on an ongoing basis, and they would be providing their own vehicles, but in every case, both what the service that the vehicles that they have, their personnel, as well as their activities are fully branded by the town of Kirkland Lake as bylaw enforcement. It's not somebody just showing up and telling somebody else what to do. The process itself would be that the municipality continues to receive complaints. We process that with TIPS or TIPS, and they will do the investigation, come back with the results. The staff, the company itself has very well-trained individuals. They have an ongoing professional development program that I think would work to our benefit. They have worked in a variety of fields already, so I think that the experience that they bring to the table will allow them to come up to steam very quickly. One of the first areas that they will be working in will be within clean yards. As we move into the springtime, they'll be working with the chief building inspector to go about, learn how this, learn the ins and outs of the clean yard bylaw, as well as handing out friendly reminders that people can clean up. It is a one-year contract with an option to extend into the future. It will be reviewed constantly because there will be reports provided to the municipality on every ongoing file that we can see what can be done better. So it's going to be a proactive approach to it. The last item that we have is policy and bylaw review. It has been brought to council's attention a number of times that the policy environment for the municipality does need to be updated and redone fairly significantly. The issue that we have is that we do have a large pool of policies, and they are interlinked. So as we're going through and we're trying to bring them forward for modernization or for in some cases dismissal, we have to work back to see where else they might be contradicting or influencing other policies, and that's taking time. Nevertheless, we do want to start bringing them forward to you and ask for your input. So some of the ones that we are working on are listed here: the travel expense, the flag raising, and as well as communications, asset management, fit for duty. Some of them look as if they are not the most pressing issues, such as flag raising, but it is actually quite important to members of the public, and so we thought we should be dealing with that, especially as we're going forward here. So we will be bringing some of these forward over the course of the next few months, and we will be looking for council's input. I'm done.
Yes, the bylaw
Bylaw
for the
enforcement.
bylaw enforcement office.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
In terms of the bylaw enforcement, when it comes to things like illegally parked cars, is that going to be by complaint only, or are they going to have some sort of regular patrol to enforce that?
They are in the community, and that will be included as part of their normal duties. They will be doing that proactively as well.
Okay, so if, as a counselor, I didn't think they were doing their job, what would be the procedure? Would it be to go through you? Say we decide to go that route?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor, go ahead.
Sorry, yes, I'm referring you back to the bylaw policy that we passed a few months ago, and that was spelling out the responsibilities in that. Sorry.
Councillor White?
Well, if you mentioned that the town will field calls, so if members of the public see something, they'd be calling who at the town hall to complain?
We would like that the complaints continue to flow through physical services, so if there's a property issue, it's tracked with the activity request, and then we have an ongoing record as well as a management tool for dealing with tips.
And they'll be tracking this to ensure follow-up is done.
Yes, on a monthly basis, and then perhaps moving to a quarterly, whichever will work best for us. They will be providing ongoing reports as to files that have been opened, what has been done with them, what ongoing investigations in that.
Okay. Any other, Councillor Owens?
Yeah, is the contract set up for so many hours a week, or is it flexible? Like, how's that work out that we know that we're getting what we paid for? That's my question.
Yeah, that's probably the best question that could be asked. As we get into this, we're keeping it open right now, because each bylaw, as they become familiar with it and as they begin to work with it, we will be able to identify some hours that go with that. We're going to be conservative, and we're allowed to do that through the complaint process. We want you to explore this one, we want it done by now, etc. As we work through, we will have a greater level of familiarity with them as they will with us, and we will be able to assign a monthly basis at that point. There will be other duties that they do that were shared amongst multiple staff here. One would be, of course now I'm going to draw a blank. Ashley, over here, eye contact. No, they will be working with the taxi cab companies, ideally. They will be helping us with other aspects of operations. One of the things that is unique in it, this relationship, is that they are available to provide other services as required. So if there is an event and we do need to have, a security personnel there, we can call upon them. That's a separate and above charge.
Councillor White?
In the report, it states expenses will be offset by revenue generation. What revenues?
And part of that would be fines, et cetera, taxi licenses.
Manager of Human Resources. This is on the updated and reviewed health and safety policy.
Hello, good evening. Yes, I'm bringing forward the Health and Safety Act. It's an umbrella policy which was passed last year. It's part of our due diligence as employers under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, that we've committed to reviewing this on an annual basis and updating our policies if required. So this particular one, there's no change since last year, but bringing that forward for your review and acting for a resolution.
Questions, comments? Councillor Adams?
Yep, just some, just in the wording. Section 25 of the Occupational Health and Safety Act outlines mandatory and general responsibilities for employers, supervisors, and employees. Section 25 is only specific to duty of employers. So if we can get the employees out, or are we talking about staff employees as the whole corporation?
We are.
So
yes.
it's duties of employer. Okay. And then safety committee, a lot of references are made by the government. They don't call them safety committees, they're joint health and safety committees, because we can just make up any safety committee at that point.
Right.
So should we throw in joint health and safety committee member?
Okay. Thank you. I can note those changes.
But like even for the section 25, there is different sections within there that are duties of employees. So if we can quote section 25, 24, right, that's duties of employee, and that would cover the whole spectrum.
So you'd like me to pull all the sections into the policy?
Well, we're only referencing 25, it looks like, in the policy.
Right.
And saying that it's going to cover duties of employers, supervisors, employees, but within the Occupational Health and Safety Act, there is section 24, which is duties of employees, so section 25, 24, and so on.
There's also section 26, which is additional duties.
Yep.
If you want that to be,
Yep, just more clearly defined.
okay.
So Pam, this will be coming back to
Sure.
to the
I'll bring
next
it back,
council
yep.
meeting? Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you. Joanne? Human Value Days?
Okay, so this is a request that has come forward to the Council of the Town of Kirkland Lake. This is the second time that it has come to council. The group who put together the Walk for Human Values started this because of an event that happened in Toronto. And what they're trying to do is raise awareness of human values and to build proper communities with character. So they are asking Kirkland Lake to please proclaim a Human Values Day on April 24th, 2019. And I have a resolution. It's signed by Councillor Dennis Perrier, seconded by Councillor Rick Owen. The council proclaims April 24th, 2019 as Human Value Days in and for the town of Kirkland Lake.
Questions, discussion? All in favor? Passed.
The next one is the National Day of Mourning, which is April the 28th. This year in Kirkland Lake, we have not been able to find anybody who is doing an actual celebration or a memorial service in Kirkland Lake, but we would like to still put the flags at half-mast because it is the National Day of Mourning. So I do have a resolution that is moved by Councillor Rick Owen, seconded by Councillor Dennis Perrier. The Council of the Town of Kirkland Lake declares Sunday, April 28th, 2019 as the National Day of Mourning, and for the Town of Kirkland Lake to put the flags at Town Hall and the Miners Memorial Monument be flown at half-mast.
All in favor? Unanimous?
And the next one is a request from Community Living. They could not make it here tonight, but they have asked if May could please be declared as Community Living Month in and for the Town of Kirkland Lake. Usually they do ask also to hang the banners uptown, but because this is our 100th anniversary and we do have the 100th anniversary banners, they did realize that this is a special circumstance. But they are asking, however, that their flag be flown at Town Hall for the month of May. So I do have a resolution that is moved by Councillor Rick Owen, and it's seconded by Councillor Dennis Perrier. The council declare May 2019 as Community Living Month in and for the Town of Kirkland Lake, and that the Community Living flag be flown at Town Hall for the month of May, subject to other demands for flying flags.
All in favor? Unanimous? Manager of Planning and Land Development, Ashley Bilodeau. Oh, jeez. Jeez. I'm sorry, I keep calling you Ashley, Rick. That's twice, 2 weeks in a row.
Okay, so I have a report today for the airport lease agreement with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. Staff's recommended we enter into the lease agreement with the MNRF to operate their fire services base from the Kirkland Lake Airport. There are revenues associated with the lease agreement for a total of around $3,000 with the potential for an additional $1,200 depending on the fire season. There is also an opportunity in the event that there should be a fire in the area. I would hope not, but if it does happen, then there's a potential for fuel sale revenue for their operations. The fees are established at $591.54 per month, and that's based on the 2019 user fees. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry have utilized the airport as their fire base for several years. The lease establishes a presence at the airport for a total of 5 months with the option for additional 2 months, being April and October. I'm pretty sure we don't have to worry about April this year, depending on the fire activity in the area. Their intent is to utilize part of, there's an office in the hangar, and they utilize that space for themselves to mobilize in case there is an event. They like to maintain a presence in Kirkland Lake, as their past Swastika fire base is going through some changes. There's other industries and ministries using that base, so they felt they'd scale it down, but to keep a presence here, they would like to use part of the airport for that. On occasion, they would bring in a storage container, and there's an area located nearby we established for their helicopter. So the options are to consider to go ahead and enter into a lease agreement with the MNRF, or to not enter into the lease agreement with the MNRF. Any questions?
Councillor Ivanov?
Are there any expenses or extra expenses involved?
Absolutely not.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Casey?
What happens for the week where the drag races? Do they have to move their equipment out of there, or?
Nope. That whole area is it's blocked off,
Okay.
so there's no access to pedestrians.
And if
or-
there was to be a fire, would they have precedence over the drag races?
No. They have alternative means to attack a fire. If it was like the one in 2012, yeah, I'm pretty sure they would say, okay, enough's enough, we're coming in, but depending on the circumstances, for sure.
Councillor Rick Owen?
Yeah, Rick, I know you said there was no expenses involved, but the area for the helicopter, is there any preparation or is there any legal requirements that have to
Absolutely
be
not.
met in terms of, so
No.
that's a cleared area?
It's just grass.
Okay, great.
It's identified, if you look in the report, you'll see a GIS photograph, and you'll see there's an area to the, oh no, that's just grass and esker sand. Oh, okay. No, and they come and go, and there's no added additional cost to us whatsoever.
Rick, I may have missed this. Is this a one-year contract or is it?
This is every May around this time of the year, they want to enter into the lease agreement for the 5 months. It's just for the fire
Okay.
season, and we sign off on that, and then they do their thing, and next year we'll come back again.
Okay, that'll be coming back as a bylaw. Councillor White?
Sorry, I just wanted to thank you for including the actual lease agreement. It's so much easier to make a decision when we read and understand it. So I do really appreciate that, and I'm sure the public does as well. So
Okay.
thank you.
You're very welcome. Anything else?
Okay,
C'est
thank
bon?
you. Okay, Ashley, everybody's favorite topic, the pigeons.
You took my line. I was gonna say the same thing. I was like, it's my favorite topic. Okay. So pigeons. At this point, we've already passed the bylaw in late 2018 that prohibited residents from feeding the pigeons. OPP have been dealing with ticketing and targeting problem areas. They have charged individuals under the bylaw, but we're still seeing lots of calls come in and lots of concerns in regards to pigeons. So we have been trying to find alternative solutions to dealing with them. So what we did was we put together a report with, I think there was 4 options that were considered, that were tossed around the table the last time we met. So we took a deeper analysis of those 4 options. So the first and the recommended one on my end would be to trap them. We had the Kirkland Lake Fish and Game Association come to council, and at that point they did recommend that we purchase traps that could be lent out to residents for trapping, either having individuals themselves trapping the birds or hiring somebody that would be able to trap the birds. We did recognize that they would need a small game hunting license in order to do so. So if we were to proceed with trapping them, there's 3 different ways we could do it. We could either have a municipally run program, which means that we would hire an individual to trap them in problem areas and be responsible for the costs associated. We'd have to go through a request for quotation process based on our procurement policy. There's the option of privately running it with municipal aid. So this is my recommended option, is to have traps that are available at the town that you could either borrow or rent. And the residents either take it upon themselves or hire someone themselves to trap nuisance pigeons in the area. Or there's just leave things status quo, privately run, and encourage residents to hire someone to trap and purchase the traps themselves. So we did do a little bit of digging in terms of the costs associated with this process. We figured it's about $65 to purchase a pigeon trap that holds about 10 to 15 pigeons. We did receive confirmation from the federal government that a kill permit's not required. And we have confirmed with our waste department, I know this isn't a nice thing to think about, but we've confirmed that the pigeons are capable of being disposed of at the landfill site as well. So if council's not interested in encouraging the killing of pigeons or the trapping, you could trap them and relocate them. Our research is showing that you'd have to bring them 600 kilometers away for them not to find home again. So if somebody wants to throw the pigeons in a back pickup and drive to Ottawa, I'm sure maybe we can, I don't know, we can make them happy over there. I'm a little concerned about what the other areas would say of us bringing our pigeons to them, but we could look at it as, if you wanted to look at it as an option. The second option that's here is the birth control, and this was brought up at council. So there is a product on the market that interferes with the reproduction of treated birds, which causes their population to decline through attrition. So useful for managing pigeon flocks in larger areas without having to resort to poisons or trapping and killing. There would be a 50% reduction of pigeons annually, according to the information that we found on their page. This is an expensive option. It's $9 per day approximately for the product itself, and approximately $350 for the automatic feeder. There's no control over which birds will be consuming the birth control, so that's a bit of a downfall using this product. It's considered a pesticide, so care must be taken to avoid non-target birds or other animals. It's also, like I said, one of the most expensive options. We'd also have to amend our pigeon bylaw to reflect that we have the rights to feed the pigeons through this particular method, so that we're not out of compliance with our own bylaws. The third option that was presented at council when we brought this forth in December was to create a rural bird feeding area. So that's basically taking a piece of town-owned property that's in the rural area and dedicate it towards bird feeding. The thought was to encourage the feeding of pigeons in an area outside of the urban settlement area to reduce effect on urban neighborhoods. So there is costs associated with doing this by installing an access road, a driveway, a safe turnaround space, and potentially leveling the land. The downfalls, we own a lot of vacant land, which is great, but there are properties in and around ours that are privately owned, so whether those residents are going to be pleased with us encouraging pigeon population in that area. So, and the other concern is that the site becomes inaccessible to those who do not own a vehicle or are unable to drive. So how do they get there to feed the birds? The other option, well, it's not really an option, it's something that could be done together with any of those options, is dealing with the nesting sites. And the option was whether we could do that through property standards. Property standards will be coming back to council on the 7th, so we are going to do a really good breakthrough of what property standards entails, which I think will be beneficial for council and the public to hear. But for the purpose of this, there are provisions within the property standards bylaw that restrict homeowners from creating nesting areas as a result of leaving broken windows or other access in a derelict state for a significant period of time. Implementing this condition, though, like putting in for as a way to combat the pigeons specifically, it's a challenge. The purpose of the clause within that property standards bylaw is to protect the residents of that unit from health and safety risk. So it's protecting buildings that are not vacant, so buildings that people are living in. So if the windows were open and there was pigeons flying in and there was someone living inside that building, then yes, definitely we have a property standards concern. The fact that these buildings are vacant don't hold up well when you take those issues to court. So at this point, dealing with vacant buildings, we did talk about the potential of introducing a vacant building bylaw, and I will be bringing information to council on that May 7th meeting, so you can see where that need would be, or where the gaps are in the property standards bylaw that vacant building bylaw would address. But obviously there are costs associated with implementing that vacant building bylaw that I'd like to bring to council's attention prior to making any decisions on proceeding that route. As for recommendations, like I mentioned before, whether we could purchase 3 or 4 traps that the residents could then borrow with a deposit to make sure that we get them back. That's probably the best way that we could potentially proceed that wouldn't have a significant cost attributed to the municipality. Are there questions?
Councillor White?
Sorry, Ashley, do you need a permit to actually trap them, or is it the killing that requires the permit or license?
Probably the killing. I don't know for sure, but I'm almost positive it'd be the
Trapping.
Is the trapping? The trap? Okay.
Councillor Owen?
Yeah, when Dan England made his presentation at council, I asked about that. And you personally don't have to have it, but the person who puts the trap on your property. So there's a lot of people in town that have their small game or small game and bird license. I don't think, they may have to actually sign out the trap if we go that route to keep it legal. But I don't think the M&R is gonna go around and look at who's putting the bird seed in there. I think they got better things to do, like chasing bears.
To add to that, Councillor Owen, I was going to ask Ashley, was that the Game and Fish organization that did that presentation?
Yes. Yeah.
I thought they were going to come back with a plan, or was there a cost involved? Can you kind of update us on just where that went?
I don't think they were planning on coming back. I think it was up to us to decide which way we'd like to
What way we
proceed, and
wanted
if
to
they,
go.
yeah, and if we needed assistance, they were willing to help us to a certain extent.
Councillor?
Yeah, I would certainly be in favor of us buying some traps, like, 6 or 8, whatever it takes, at whatever, $60 each, and invest $500 and lend them out to people who would be trapping pigeons and disposing of them in some form or fashion. And I think it's time that we got this under control.
If I could, if $65 is the cost of the trap, then could I suggest that council consider charging a little bit more so that we have some dollars coming in to replace the traps as well? And perhaps buy more, not just a flat out.
Councillor White, go ahead.
Sorry, is it a rental system or a deposit system where they give us the $65, they bring it back, and it's fine? We give the 65 back, or do you want to see it as a revenue generating system?
I think that's probably something council will need to decide. My recommendation was to just borrow with deposit, but that's up to council. If they'd like to see revenue generated from those traps, then we could easily add a user fee to it.
Councillor Owens? Councillor Ivanov?
I would hate to discourage people from getting the traps and doing what we probably should be doing, getting rid of these pigeons. If somebody's willing to do it on their own and just borrow a trap from us, I think that would be the best way of doing it, as opposed to charging somebody for doing something that we just haven't got the resources to do.
Councillor Owen?
Yeah, normally I don't miss an opportunity to generate revenue, but I'm in total agreement with Eugene on this. We know it's an issue. It's been an issue for a long time. We can't afford to spend more taxpayers' money, like, to hire somebody, put out the traps and feed them and all the rest of it. If we can get the community, which I believe is behind, is backing getting rid of the pigeons, I don't think we should profit. I think we should do everything we can to encourage it. We may want to start with 3 traps, and if they go out right away, then maybe we want to look at buying another 3. We don't know what the response is. I'd hate to see us go out and buy 8, 10 traps and then only 2 of them ever go out. But I don't think they're hard to, and Ashley probably knows, I don't think they're hard to get in terms of delivery time and stuff. But yeah, I want to encourage people to take advantage of this and hopefully help not just themselves, but the whole community by trapping them and getting rid of them.
Councillor Perrier?
I'd just like to say that not everybody in Kirkland Lake is in favor of getting rid of these pigeons, so we got to be very careful. If we are going to trap them and destroy them, we got to do it in the most humane way we can possibly think of doing, because we are going to get some slack or feedback from other people. There's no doubt about it.
I agree. Councillor Owens?
I agree with you, not everybody agrees with it, but I'd like to invite these people, these individuals that are opposed to it, to maybe come up on my roof with me, and like, short of going on my neighbor's building and shutting up all the holes that permit the pigeons from going in there, I'd like I'd like these individuals to come and see what the damage is, and maybe like they can try and justify why we shouldn't be doing this, because it is a serious problem.
Councillor Adams?
Yep, so I would be in favor of the deposit for the traps as well. What people choose to do with that after is up to them. If they choose to go release it, that's in their well-being and rights to do so, or whatever they choose. But I'm in to help the municipality find a way to deal with the pigeons, and if we can provide traps for people to deal with it in the way that they choose, then that would be up to them. But I would be in support of having the traps available to people to make those choices that they should be able to make on their own.
I agree. Councillor Owens?
Yeah, something that hasn't been mentioned, everybody's assuming the pigeons are gonna be killed and taken to the dump, but they are very edible, and some cultures eat them on a regular basis. No, I know you can laugh all you want, but there are certain cultures that is part of the mainstay of their environment, of their food table. I know my father grew up extremely poor, and they ate pigeons. It's just like any other small game bird. It's an edible thing that, so everybody shouldn't assume they're all going to be killed and taken to the dump. They can be eaten. They may have to find the recipes and instructions on how to prepare them and all that, but they are a very edible product, bird, whatever.
I'd just like to, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I believe the pigeon population has escalated to a point that trapping may not be enough. I'd just like to keep the birth control option open. I do realize that at $3.95 for the feeders and $9 a day, it's about $1,600 for 6 months before taxes, plus the feeder itself. I don't think we should completely roll it out. I think that maybe the issue needs a tiered system over time. So I don't think we should just get rid of that option. I think it should stay on the table.
I think it can be brought back to review. I agree with you. I don't think trapping them is going to solve the whole problem. I will say, I did reach out to one of our biggest violators. He was very civil. We had a good discussion. I realized what happened. He started to feed a couple of pigeons here and there, and all of a sudden it got to 500 or 600. He did say, whether this will happen or not, that when the snow is gone, that he will quit feeding them. I pray to God he keeps his word. So I'm putting that challenge out to him. And to anybody else that's feeding these pigeons, please stop. It's causing more damage to people's roofs, people who can't afford having their roof redone, and it's a real nuisance. So that challenge is out to all those people that are feeding to please stop. We'll see what happens.
So the resolution is written as recommended by Ashley. It's moved by Councillor Rick Owen, seconded by Councillor Dennis Perrier. The council direct the chief administrative officer to proceed with purchasing 4 traps for residents to borrow with a deposit and to hire someone to trap nuisance pigeons in the area.
No,
Okay.
the last part.
And to hire someone to trap nuisance pigeons. That's exactly what's on the screen. Did you want that amended?
Councillor Owens?
Yeah, we don't want to, as a counselor, I don't want to hire somebody to
Okay.
track it.
Okay.
I would like some tracking of how effective it's been, like, for staff to, even if it's just, how often the traps go out and which neighborhoods they go to. And we have town staff doing various jobs all over town, and we could just ask them to, over a period of time, if they've noticed a decrease. But we certainly don't need to hire somebody to track the process. Just keep track of how often and where they're going, and thank you.
I agree, not at this
So then
point.
the resolution is that the council direct the chief administrative officer to proceed with purchasing 4 traps for residents to borrow with a deposit.
All in favor? Unanimous. Proposed taxi cab licensing bylaw?
Okay, so this one has already come to council once as a draft, and what we did was we tabled the bylaw at that council meeting with an opportunity for me to speak with both taxi brokers as well as the public if there was any concerns. So this is basically an update to what was formally discussed and the comments received from both taxi taxi brokers. So there is still I should mention also that we did meet with the police service board as well. So we do have comments and their resolution as part of this report as well. So criminal record checks is still probably the biggest concern for both taxi cab brokers, and was also an issue that was raised at the police service board. They don't believe, the taxi brokers do not believe that they're necessary on an annual basis. Some of them have had cab drivers driving with them for a very long time without any issues, so they don't see it as a need to do a $25 check every year. Councillor Owens during the last meeting suggested that there is an alternative to conducting checks every year by signing a waiver form, so that was tossed back and forth between councillors. Both companies loved that idea of seeing that waiver form be established, recognizing that some of the drivers, like I said, have been with them forever and then do not pose a threat to the public. In their opinion, they figured it was a waste of time and money. The police service board, however, disagreed and passed a resolution recommending council to proceed with requiring criminal reference checks annually. So that one there, that's kind of where they would like to see it go. Insurance was another thing that was raised by co-op. So we recognized that the minimum dollar figure for liability insurance increased from 1 million in the old bylaw to 5 million in the new, and that's 5 million is pretty much standard in the majority of our municipal contracts that we have. So that's why we had originally put $5 million. So like I said, co-op raised the issue of how this was going to affect him. He had called his insurance company and currently has a policy set at 2 million, and to go to 5 was in his based on his feedback he received, was going to raise his fees to $4,000 per vehicle, which was a substantial jump. So I did reach out to our insurance representatives, and they did advise me that it's too complicated to analyze or advise what the increase may be because it's dependent on claim history, coverages of vehicles, driver's experience. But based on the rating factor to go to a $5 million liability, it's 1.396. So if their current premium for the one vehicle is $1,000, the premium for $5 million worth of liability would be $1,396. So our again reached out to our procurement department to see whether or not that $5 million was normal or was a good number. He did mention that that's typically for contracts involving commercial vehicles, so anything with triaxles or dump trucks. They're prone to larger claims and therefore need higher dollar value. Insurance companies are advocating between 2 to 5 million when it comes to passenger vehicles, such as a taxi. And what I did was I reached out to North Bay, Aurelia, Sudbury, and Timmins, and they all have $2 million insurance liability in their bylaws. So I have changed the bylaw to reflect a $2 million insurance liability, being consistent with other municipalities. So definitely within our standard of going between 2 to 5 million from a procurement standpoint, so no issues there. There was also other issues that were raised by the taxi brokers that I attached to this report, and in the bylaw you'll actually see my comments of whether I added it or didn't add it or why I did it or didn't, just so that we had some good, clear, consistent information coming forward. Are there questions?
Yeah, in the discussion at the police board meeting, one thing that was brought up that we didn't discuss at council concerning cab drivers is that the school boards use them, and the children go in cabs escorted to various things. I know when my oldest son was in his grade 1, he was supposed to go from federal school to the health unit unescorted in a cab. And as a parent, I was so uncomfortable with that, I made sure that I was there the once or twice a week that he had to make the trip. And that, I think, is something that we have to consider when we're considering police checks, background checks. The other thing with police background checks is that I've known people that have done criminal activity for many, many years and never been caught. They're good at it. So the fact that somebody's had a taxi license for 20 years, say, and they haven't been charged, doesn't mean if they're doing something illegal that they won't get charged in the future. I think it's the responsible thing to do, is to have them go through a yearly police check. It's only $25. I know taxi drivers don't make a lot of money, but I don't think that's unreasonable, and I think it gives the public a higher level of security when using the cabs. So,
Councillor Ivanov?
Yeah, I agree with Rick, and I think, you know, if Ashley talks to co-op and says, look, we took the insurance down from 5 million down to 2 million, the savings there, he might even cover the police checks for the cab drivers, and if he doesn't, I think a $25 investment in keeping somebody safe and secure is a pretty inexpensive day. And we have a lot of cabs coming to my establishment, and I think most of those guys can easily afford $25.
I attended that police services meeting as well, Rick. It was the chief's recommendation. I think it's over-regulation, personally. School bus drivers are not required to do this. I kind of question the way Eugene, you said it's a savings by cutting back from the 5 million to the 2 million. They weren't paying for 5, so there's no savings. It would have been an increase. The fact that we're just leaving as it is reasonable compared to other communities with taxi service. I think there's a compromise here, whether it's every 3 years instead of yearly. They don't make a heck of a lot of money. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. That's my opinion, anyway. Councillor Casey?
School bus drivers have to get their police check every year. It's a form they have to sign, but if we're not going that option, we still have, as a driver, I still have to sign that form saying that I didn't get any criminal charges. And to further on what Councillor Rick Owen said, to be able to operate for the school board, I believe the taxi companies are supposed to get these checks done every year. Now, if it was done or not, I don't know, but it's supposed, I think I remember seeing something where it was in their contract, it was supposed to be done. Otherwise, because we're on, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor White?
I feel when it comes to public safety, definitely the chief of police is more of an expert than I am. And if the police board recommends yearly at $25, I'm not going to disagree with the chief of police.
Councillor Owens?
I just wanted to point out one other big difference between school buses and taxi cabs. In a taxi cab, the driver has that I'm referring back to children again, has that child alone in that taxi cab for the length of the ride. In a school bus, for the most part, I know there are times when there will be situations where it's just the driver and the last kid or the first kid, but for the most part, there's other children present. So I think the risk level is much higher in a taxi towards something happening than it is on a school bus. And I think that alone justifies having it done every year.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor Adams?
Yep, just in the form of the presentation of how this policy was laid out with all the comments, that was excellent, well done. It was great to see that, just why the words were changed, great for transparency. The background check, certainly the year. Certainly the police service board would like to see it as the OPP, as that's a revenue source for them, so I'd be in favor too if I was a police department. But, it's a form of regulation. There's certainly a non-regulation in the form of Uber drivers, and you can see some of the stories that happen by those drivers, right? So it's just that yearly check as to what can be done. So I'd be in favor of the yearly check.
Any other comments, questions? That's coming back as a bylaw? Repairs to the North Clarifier Kirkland Lake Sewage Treatment Plant.
I'm so lucky that half of you already know this issue. I'm only gonna break how many hearts tonight. Okay, so the North Clarifier, this was circulated to council back in March. And I kind of gave a summary of what exactly happened. It started in November. The clarifier motor tripped out on overload. They tested it, realized the motor was burnt out, went to go change it, wouldn't start up again, and apparently a shear pin ended up shearing away. So they went to go fix it, figured that they knew what the issue was, let us know that it was going to be approximately $24,000, I believe, to fix. So when they went to do the repair, they actually found that it's a much bigger issue. So at this point, what happened was there was four wear pins that keep the rakes from the rake is the thing that goes around and moves all of the stuff. That'll be nice. It keeps it from tipping too far. So there's these pins that make sure that the rake is staying in place. One of the pins vibrated loose, letting it fall into the gears, which caused the malfunction. These pins are bolted from the top, and that bolt, those bolts specifically, are supposed to have Loctite on the threads so they don't come loose. It turned out that the installer didn't seem to install that one Loctite, or install Loctite on that one pin. So my first question was, okay, how do we make sure that Loctite was on the other ones? And they did do a check to make sure everything else was done appropriately, so we're not going to see this happen again. But there was one that was not the Loctite didn't get on it. So when they did a full check with the manufacturers on site, they found out that the bottom outer gear casing was also broken. So it's likely due again to that loose pin that got trapped. So they didn't know that was even going to be an issue without having to take that gear case apart. So Aqua has attempted to weld the outer casing, but it has broke. So the intent at this time is to pull the walkway and the block rakes, hire a crane that's big enough to lift everything out, and then put new parts back in place. This is a pretty big hit on your capital budget. They haven't finalized the price, but they're thinking it'd be around $50,000, and it'll be dependent on that cost of the crane rental. So at this point, we have told them to go ahead. The North Clarifier is something that is something we absolutely need in order to process the sewer that's coming in, especially with spring runoff just moments away. It's a little nerve-wracking knowing that we're only going to have one clarifier operating. They're sure that we're going to be able to meet all of our requirements, but it would be better if the two were working as we move into spring.
Councillor Owens?
So all this happened because of one little bolt didn't have Loctite.
Yeah,
So on the
it's
manufacturer when they installed it.
about that big.
So, and they're not liable in any way, shape, or form?
We have Aqua looking into it. So one of the things we asked when we presented it at our roads budget meeting was whether the installer is on the hook for any of this. At this point, we need to approve the cost because the work needs to get done.
Yeah.
But if there is an opportunity to recover,
Then
I
we
will do my
be-
absolute best to make sure that
Okay.
Aqua fights for it, but I can't promise anything.
And the south one's safe?
The south one's fine, yes. They've done a full analysis on all of the bolts on south and north to be sure that, yeah.
Councillor Owen?
So, I'm not happy that the price has gone from 25,000 to 50,000. Did they get it? Are they doing the repairs? Are there any, would it be cheaper for us to hire a contractor outside and have them do the repairs? Was any of this looked into when the price jumped from 25,000 to 50,000? it makes me very nervous when we spend this much money and we've only looked at one company to do the work. You know, we should be looking at more than one company when we're spending this much money to find out, at least we find out then whether we're getting value for our money or we're not. And if we're not, then we need to ask more questions.
I believe that part of the issue too was with the manufacturer, that if it's manufacturer, Aqua, you're trying to keep the same relationship because that could be going south.
Yeah, no, that's
And-
fine, but that doesn't help the ratepayers of this town.
I agree. I think that Aqua did take a look to see if somebody else could do it. There would still be costs associated with them working on it as well. I could ask if I could bring that back for you.
Yeah, because we're talking a major expenditure here, and I certainly wouldn't spend $50,000 without getting more than one price. Like, that's just common sense. And I don't know what our contract is with Aqua, what our obligations are in order, like, maybe contractually we have to have them repair it. I don't know that. But I certainly would like some answers, and to think that it's already been approved, and we didn't, council didn't approve the expenditure like that I know we need 2 clarifiers to operate the system properly. But the system's still operating right now on 1 clarifier. So it's not like we were saying to people, you can't flush your toilets, you know. The system is still operating. There was time to investigate these things before saying, yeah, go ahead and do it. So I mean, I find that upsetting that this amount of money would be approved away from the council table, and then it comes back to council, and what choice do we have?
I think the other aspect too that I can ask for is the Ministry of Environment's input on that as well. If there was any pressure from the Ministry of Environment to get that rectified as soon as possible, they can bring that back for you as well.
But the Ministry of Environment would only be involved if our outflow wasn't meeting the current standards, so.
Not necessarily. They would also be notified if there's any problems at the plant, and if they notify that that could cause environmental issues down the road, Ministry of Environment would be very involved up front.
Okay, I'm
So
just not happy about this whole situation.
Councillor Ivanov?
Oh, can I?
Yeah,
sorry.
Rick, I know you weren't part of the sewer and budget, but when we did the sewer and budget meeting, there was actually a concern about discharge because they needed 2 clarifiers during spring runoff. And there was actually going to be some issues with the Ministry of the Environment that we could not handle with the single clarifier. So I remember Anthony talking about that at the budget meeting.
But again, it's an Aqua person talking about Aqua spending money. And, you know, I'm saying when we're spending this much money, if we have the flexibility in the contract with Aqua, we should always be getting at putting it out for at least a second bid. Otherwise, we're just accepting their prices at face value. I mean, that to me is not a responsible way to spend ratepayers' money.
I think clarification, Ashley, needs to be made. When this clarifier broke down, did we instruct Aqua to tear it apart to see what the problem was?
That's typically part of their contract. So when an issue arises, they do maintenance of our equipment, but I don't know up to a certain, like, is there a certain price point where eventually it gets to a point where we need to go to a competitive process? That's something I would like to look into. But on all of our work with this water and sewage treatment plant, if something breaks down, they are obligated to repair it. I just don't know whether it's a difference when it gets to this amount.
So they do have a considerable expense built into this already.
Yeah, so the 25,000, that was before they found out what the other issues were. So there's a $25,000 thing that was brought to council's attention back in March, I believe. We'd sent an email out letting them know that this happened and that they were working on trying to repair it. And at this point, we wanted to make sure that council's aware we're going from 25 to 50 because it's even bigger
And I think that's
issue. But we
important to
can
note
bring
it
that.
wasn't incrementally getting worse.
Yeah.
Every time they opened it, they found something else wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point do you stop and bring somebody else in?
Yeah, and I will certainly
So,
look into the contract and see what it reads and brings that back to council for your information, for sure.
Councillor Perrier?
But what I don't understand is, you can always get a second and a third opinion from just, it's about any contractor, and they don't charge you for this. So what's the problem with bringing other people in to have a look at things? I don't understand it. We, at the mine, never do anything like that without getting somebody else to give you your opinion. You know, it's just the way the system works. I think we have to stay on top of them kind of things.
Councillor Adams?
Yeah, just going over our procurement policy, I think it's good to refresh on Part 3, General Procurement Procedures, Request for Quotation. So 3.1, Request for Quotation Procedures used unless otherwise determined by the Chief Administrative Officer. So the item is greater than 25,000 but no greater than 100,000. The requirement can be fully defined and best value for the town can be achieved by an award selection made on the basis of the lowest bid that meets specifications. So that's just how that's worded. So for clarification, it would be in the best interest to get a quotation for that.
I think in this instance, though, it was an emergency fix, so I'm not sure whether that played a role, and again, I'm not sure what the contract
I don't think that we had a full scope of what the problem was to get a full quote yet. So this is the point that we're at right now.
Yeah.
We can certainly ask Aqua, can you just postpone work until, now that you know what it is, we can at least scope out the project. Had we gone to get another person in, another firm in, I think you would have extended the period of discovery too, because it wasn't obvious what the problem was. And so I'd like to say that, okay, we're at that point right now where you actually do know what's involved. Let's go out and get a quote. I think that we should expedite the quotation process, get a narrative from Aqua as to what's required, and let's see. That would be, I would like to think that they could do that fairly quickly. We would certainly let council know.
And I'll verify the contract to see whether or not there's anything stipulated in there.
Councillor Owen?
Yeah, and I appreciate the fact that one thing led to another and that the price went up. I'm not arguing the price went up. It shouldn't have gone up because they did find other problems. But it's important that it's the town that asks for the other quote and not Aqua, because it just, for the protection of the ratepayers, it has to be the town that requests the other quotes.
Is there an issue if Aqua Engineering puts a quote in for it?
No.
I mean, that would be just as fair to anybody else too, right?
Yeah, no, I mean,
It's a separate branch, I should say that.
yeah, I know it's a separate branch, and by all means, I mean, they're open to bid on it. But the request has to come from the town and not Aqua, in my opinion.
I think that that's part of the clarification with the contract too, that when things are happening at that pace, if we've engaged them as the operator, we have surrendered some responsibilities to them, and then we have to find out where that goes. I'm interested in knowing what MOECP said, because that could have also activated the process faster too.
Yeah, and there's also, they're the overall responsible operator as well, so whether that plays, we'll look into it. There's a lot of factors. Yeah.
Councillor Owens?
I'm all for transparency, but what happens if we have to tell residents that for whatever reason something happens and we lose the second clarifier? Like, I mean, if we go out to tender, is this going to extend the process? Like, I'd rather pay an extra $25,000 up. No, I'm going to be misquoted on this one. I'm going to be so misquoted. Okay, I wouldn't want to pay extra $25,000, but I don't want the Ministry of Environment coming knocking on our doors, giving us a, I don't know how many $100,000 fine because we had to bypass the whole sewage plant and ended up in Murdoch Creek. And so, like, we have to outweigh the benefits. Yes, we need to do our research, make sure it's done, but is this the, I don't know. This one scares me a bit.
Councillor White?
Sorry, are we actually asking for a tender on the project or for like a contractor to come in, look at it and give us an idea, a quote, an estimate, rather than like
So my only concern is that I'm not sure who's going to be, like, it's going to be someone from south that's going to have to come up that has the expertise to deal with these, or is it, like, it's, no?
I think that because you may have a manufacturer's issue, the manufacturer would have something to say about that. The other part of it is, are you getting a fair quote? Because right now, that thing is lying there in pieces. So are you, you know, you're going to be paying for what has been done, and person comes in, it's very easy to take you to the cleaners too and say that this and this was wrong, and you're caught between two groups. I think that it might be a good idea to go forward and ask from the manufacturer other groups that could work on such a project, and we can contact them directly. And one of the questions would be, is it even worth it? Because these firms may say, well, if this is what you got and this is where you are, you might be better off just finishing it. Bring that commentary back to council too. Yeah.
I agree with you, Wolf. In this circumstance, I think we may have missed the boat, but I think in future we should give it some closer consideration.
I think that in most cases that I've seen with Aqua, when they know that there is something coming up, and you see this throughout the capital budget, they do tell you, and this is how you can go about it. So, for example, refitting, say, the pumping house at water tower, Chappie Hughes, they just spec out what has to be done. It's up to us to figure out how we want to go about that. That is partially what we work hand in hand with them for. I don't think that this is a normal circumstance. They certainly got themselves into a lot more than they anticipated, because they were looking for one problem, went into another. But I think having that communication with the manufacturer may be the correct first step. It also, you know, I think, to be fair, we need to be clear that we're not trying to step in between so that we become party to the manufacturer not taking any responsibility if that happens too. We'll have to just navigate that carefully.
Councillor Owens?
Yeah, and I think we also have some resources right within the town employees that we're not using too. Because Aqua can come here and tell me that thing could crash tomorrow, blah, 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 and I don't have the expertise to disagree with them. But we do still have town employees that worked in the sewage department that are currently employees of the town. They could be consulted, if they're willing to do that, as another opinion as to how critical certain repairs are, or because, you know, we can't, as councillors, we can't all be engineers or sewage experts or whatever, but we still have employees that have worked directly with the sewage system, and I think we should be utilizing their knowledge and experience so that we can make a better informed decision. I also realize that at this point in time with this repair, what I'm asking for may be too late. But the reason I came up on it and came up on it so strongly is I don't want to sit at this council table and be told that repairs have already been authorized and that it's going to cost $50,000 in the future. I'd like to know right away. So then, okay, we have a ballpark figure, and you throw in a contingency, and we can decide whether or not we need to go and look at an outside quote on that contract. Thank you.
I do think you bring up a valid point, Rick. Before Aqua came along, our own staff handled the majority of the repairs and maintenance. Maybe some of this work could have been done by our own employees, but we're at this point now. I don't think we have too much choice. We can find out if there's an alternative or a cheaper way of doing it. So, can you?
Don? Sorry, he's making motions.
Okay, sorry, Don.
No, you're okay. You're all right. No, just the respects to having our staff do it. Like, yeah, keep in mind that Aqua has millwrights, technicians and whatnot. They're all very well capable of doing the job and qualified to do the job. Our operators operated the facilities and would have pulled out pumps and whatnot, but to this extent of work, I think is a lot bigger scope than what we could manage, or our present staff could manage.
Councillor Owen.
When I mentioned using staff, I was mentioning only using them as a resource in terms of information and knowledge that they have. Because my problem as a councillor is Aqua can come here and say, this is critical. You know, if we don't do this, it's going to break down next week. And what choice do I have? I don't know. But we also have some employees at the town that worked in sewage, not necessarily the old sewage plant, but and they have more direct knowledge of what is critical and crucial and what is likely to happen in a sewage system. So when I brought up using staff, I just meant it as another source of information so we as councillors could make better decisions.
Staff are asking council to approve the capital expenditure. Can we still go through this process, approve a maximum of 50,000, but still go through the process of getting secondary pricing?
Yeah, I'll have to talk to Aqua about it. I'm assuming there's still that opportunity, yeah.
We know we have to get this thing fixed.
Yeah.
Is that acceptable to council? Do you want to do the bylaw now or a resolution? Sorry.
It's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Stacey White, that council approves the $50,000 costs associated with repairing the North Clarifier prior to the approval of the 2019 capital budget.
I would say a maximum of 50,000, but amount to be determined with secondary pricing. Competitive pricing. Connect the
Do you want that on here?
Yeah. So we're gonna find out one way or the other whether it's really 50 or is it 30. Yeah, we don't know. I'm not second guessing Aqua in any way. It's just wise use of the taxpayers' dollars. Do you want to reread that then?
Sure. The council approves up to a maximum of $50,000 for costs associated with repairing the North Clarifier prior to the approval of the 2019 capital budget, but that staff will come back to council with a competitive pricing process.
All in favor? Unanimous.
Ashley, did you want to split this into two because Councillor Adams does have a
Yeah,
conflict? with
sure.
her?
Which one do we need to not do? Oh, overnight camping. You can do that one, right? Okay. Yeah, sure. We'll split it into two. So this is a follow-up to the discussion we had at the last council meeting with the 100th anniversary committee. So we met last week to make sure that we were all on the same page based on the information that was provided. So I'll just talk about the overnight camping. The report pretty much stays the same as what we did last meeting, but what we did was we dropped Water Lane as an option, just because the amount of administration that would have to be involved, it wasn't something that we think the town or the 100th anniversary committee wanted to take on. So we're not even going to look at Water Lane at this point. What we're looking at specifically is overnight camping in town. So that's if somebody, a resident within the jurisdiction of Kirkland Lake, would like to have their family come stay with them overnight on their lot. with an RV or a trailer. We have no issues with that, and I think what we need to just make sure we're being aware of is the same questions that were posed of me from the insurance company is, okay, what can we do to make sure we're mitigating the risk and the liability with approving this type of activity? So what we came up with was the individual who's interested in having their relative or friend come over with their RV, they would come in and see me or someone in our department, and we'd look it up on the aerial imagery. We would develop a site plan together, which involves just highlighting where that's going to be placed, where the RV or trailer is going to be placed. And the things that we're going to be looking for is whether there's enough lot frontage that it's not going to impact neighbors, because the last thing we want is a crazy amount of bylaw enforcement where neighbors are yelling at each other because there's encroachments on properties. Whether there's emergency access, so is it blocking any major entrances or exits that could potentially, if a fire broke out, is the trailer going to be in a way that's hindering access? And vice versa, is the trailer going to be not able to open a door so that it causes issues for emergency purposes? Distances from permanent buildings and whether there's propane storage on site, whether there's any concerns there, what their plans are going to be for garbage disposal and sewage dumping, all things we need to consider. And then obviously making them aware that they should be communicating with their insurance companies as well. So if something did happen, are they adequately protected to ensure that that's not going to cause any issues? So we do expect that there'll be some staff time dedicated to this. But I think in the grand scheme of things, if we were to just give a open approval for everybody to go ahead and park everywhere, we're opening ourselves up to a lot more liability than if we have control of it. So it's all a matter of how much risk do you want to have and how much work do you want staff to do in order to try and even it out so that it's not a cumbersome process, but also mitigates a little bit of the risk that we'd be assuming in order to let it happen.
Ashley, it sounds like a good plan, but when my daughter or the next door neighbor shows up with the trailer and parks it in their driveway, am I going to phone the bylaw enforcement officer? I doubt it. I think it's going to be difficult to enforce, and people coming from out of town, they're not going to, you won't see them.
Okay.
But
And that's up to council. If they want to just allow it to happen for those 10-day periods, we're staff, we're just bringing you what we would recommend. So that's up to council to decide.
we do have a bylaw enforced, that we can enforce about parking on the street for, is it a maximum of
72 hours.
how long?
72 hours.
Yeah.
That's for storage, not for living in it. To be able to clean it out.
Well,
shouldn't
every
be
year,
residing in it.
people come and park their trailers there for weeks upon weeks, it seems. Of course, we didn't have a bylaw enforcement officer, but Councillor Ivanov.
Ashley, would you produce a letter if they did come to your department and ask you for permission to park in somebody's and you looked at a site plan for them? Is that what you do? sort
Yeah,
of
we'd create a
permission letter?
registry. It'd be,
Is that what you do?
we'd create a registry, likely.
Okay. And they
then-
would get something that they would either put on their trailer?
Yeah,
Is that
well,
what
or
you?
even we would just have a record of which ones came to talk to us.
Yeah.
So if somebody all of a sudden has a trailer on a site and the bylaw enforcement officer recognizes it, or a neighbor calls and questions it, we could then talk to them about either relocating it or just having the site reviewed to make sure that it's okay.
Okay.
Councillor Owens?
Okay, I'm not real concerned about people bringing their trailers and parking them in a friend's or neighbor's yard for the reunion. As per insurance, if they're camper trailers now, by law, they have to have them insured in order to move them from point A to point B. So I think, you know, a lot of the insurance concerns are looked after there, although I don't own one, so I don't know what type of insurance they have to have. But my concern is them parking them on the streets, and we already have a bylaw that looks after that. I'm not sure that we want people to come back and have a good time. Yes, I don't think we want. You know what happens if my second cousin decided to come in from Vancouver and didn't tell me, and he's got his trailer, and now, oh my God, I don't have a site plan. Do I kick him out? Do I tell him he's got to go back to Vancouver or what? No, I don't think we need to regulate that part of it. I think we need to make sure that we have a bylaw enforcement in place at the time. So if people are parking them on the streets, then the bylaw officer could go by and say, look, you can't do that, please move. And if they're still there, well, on the second visit, then give them a ticket. But I think this is just making work for your staff, and they don't need to do it. And I think just adding aggravation to our people that are coming into town.
I agree. Councillor Adams?
So you went about this report based on you talked to the insurance company about what we would need to do to limit our liability. So an example would be a trailer catches on fire in someone's house and the propane tank next door. So how would it be the corporation's liability at that point?
We approved it. We exempted that part of the bylaw.
Councillor White?
I believe that these issues that you bring forward are legitimate concerns in 2019. Years and years ago, we didn't care about certain safety measures, and we weren't required by law to be concerned with health and safety measures. And to me, we don't want to put up a roadblock, but we have to ensure public safety as well. I'm sure that's part of the mandate that's going along with this. And I think you did bring valid points up to how we're going to deal with this as a community.
Councillor Owens?
Yeah, my understanding of the insurance thing is that if I gave them permission to park their trailer on my property, my household insurance, because I gave permission to have that on my property, would be the first insurance company to pay out.
Yep.
The second one to pay out would be the insurance they have on the trailer. Now, if that fire or whatever damages my neighbor's house, again, the first to pay out would be my household insurance. The town would be at, I'm guessing, maybe third on the list. So I don't think it's a high risk for the town, but I do think it's an aggravation for staff and for visitors.
Councillor Owens?
Just certain areas of town, like I want to encourage this, but certain areas of town, the properties were designed or cut up in the 1920s where property standards were not even remotely something to consider. And I know if I'd had to park a RV like that, the RV would overlap my property on both sides. So I just don't want to end up in a situation where I come home and I'm ticked off at my neighbor because his RV is wider than his property and it's blocking my driveway. So I can understand we want to encourage people to come here, but if you remember the movie Christmas Vacation, Uncle Ed with his old RV, I don't particularly feel like coming home and having that thing parked in front of my house either. So I don't know.
Councillor Perrier?
In my opinion, this is the 100th anniversary of Kirkland Lake. It's a big thing, and I think that we got to give a little bit to help these people out, because our accommodations, as you know, are not very plentiful, and we're expecting, I don't know what, 40,000 people I'm hearing. So, well, that's the numbers I'm hearing. Laugh if you want, but I'm just saying, whatever we're hearing, I think that we should give some leniency here.
Councillor Owen?
Yeah, just to respond to Casey's concern, which is a legitimate concern. If there's an encroachment on my property, whether it's a temporary or permanent encroachment, as a property owner, I have the legal right to ask to have that removed. So if your neighbor comes home, or you go home and there's a 5-foot trailer and 5 feet of it's in your driveway, you have the legal right to ask your neighbor to remove it from encroaching on your property. So you know, I mean, in situations like that, hopefully neighbors will get along, but if there are situations like that, the property owner that's being encroached on has the legal authority to have it removed.
Any further comments? Yep.
So just a reminder, you can either vote for this, against it, or you can defer it. So it's written, moved by Councillor Rick Owen, seconded by Councillor Dennis Perrier. The council allows overnight camping on properties within the town during the 100th anniversary / homecoming to 2019, pending staff approval based on site-specific criteria and registration with the town planning department. For or against?
Anybody in favor?
So it's, so it's, all resolutions are written to the positive, and they're written the way that staff has asked, at their recommendations. So this is the positive. What you're asking is that council allow overnight camping on properties as long as they register with the town planning department and get the proper approval based on, you're voting in favor of that? Yes or no?
Can we? Okay. All those voting no, please put their hand up so we can.
Sorry, it's because of the conversation that went around, and I don't want another case of Market Street.
Okay, so,
We're getting busy
So what
here.
the proposal is all that sentence, not what we discussed, like of, yes, we should allow parking.
yeah, no.
This is specifically that
Anybody has to go to the planning department to get approval
Meet those
to,
conditions.
yeah, meet those, that's what, if you vote yes to this, that's what you're voting for. If you vote no for this, it's no.
So it's by no, you mean there's no part, no.
Council's not voting on it.
Yeah, yeah. That they can park.
Or you can just defer this and leave it till September.
Yeah.
That is
No,
probably
no,
legally
no.
your best thing to do. You want it, there is.
Okay. Well, you're
No, there's no bylaw. We're just defer.
Go ahead.
Okay, okay.
Hey, wait,
Yeah, there's a zoning bylaw that currently restricts you from parking overnight on your property. So you are out, if someone comes and does that, they're out of compliance. So what we're trying to do is exempt them from that requirement with that resolution. So if everybody wants to do overnight parking, you say the first part of that resolution is just allow overnight parking,
Yeah.
period,
During that period.
during
of
that
time.
10-day period. Don't add the come see me. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
Okay?
clarified.
I'm like, you need to have a bylaw. I'm like,
So we're not doing a bylaw, but we're
They
just
can
doing
all park on
resolution.
Market
Yeah,
Street.
resolutions,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, so let's go again. That council allows overnight camping
Yeah.
on properties within the town during the 100th anniversary of the homecoming 2019.
period.
Stop.
Yes.
Full stop. All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Okay.
Sounds like Market Street all over again.
Okay, so the second part. Bye, Patrick. Okay, so the Prin beer tent. This one came up as an issue, and town staff's issues were more or less to do with whether or not that site could actually accommodate a liquor license. So we had the conversation with the 100th anniversary committee, and what they'd like to see approved is they don't want to go do all the the due diligence or the having to acquire the license before they get approval, because that's a lot of work. So they want to say, okay, if we can get approval from the liquor licensing board, is that site okay to proceed? So they want to get permission on the site before they proceed with the liquor license. So it's like a condition of. We did hear from the public in regards to the Print Beer tent and it competing directly with their commercial businesses. We heard from the committee at the last meeting that we don't foresee it to be a competition at all, because there's going to be so many people coming in that they're going to need additional space and additional places to go in order to, there's going to be so many people that it shouldn't have an effect on them at all. So at this point, we have proceeded to recommend with the intent of them going to proceed with their liquor license and see whether or not they can establish the site appropriately to allow it to operate.
Discussion. Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you. Initially, I was opposed to this project from the competition point of view, but when we get the 48,000 people that Councillor Dennis has promised us, I don't even think Eugene's establishment will be able to accommodate the overflow. But seriously, though, initially I was opposed to it, thinking of the competition thing and the fact that we have taxpayers, businesses that are paying taxes. But the reality of the numbers are, even if we get 5,000 extra people in town of drinking age, the local establishments will not be able to accommodate them all. So that was my only concern. And if that site meets the requirements of the, I used to call it the Liquor Control Board, but by their new name. No, you said it right. I'm saying it wrong. Yeah. Then I have no problem with this going ahead.
I have the same feelings as Councillor Owens. Initially, I had some doubts, but I really do feel there's going to be more business than what they can handle downtown. Matter of fact, having that beer tent there is going to attract more people downtown. I think it'll attract more business for some of the local restaurants just by having those people all in one area. If they're over at Civic, it's going to draw them away from downtown. I support the approval. Councillor Casey Owens.
I still feel Civic would be the better spot. You've got the perfect location, you've got the bathrooms, you've got everything there. I see their point. There's the whole nostalgic aspect to it. I don't see it. I mean, it's a gravel parking lot on the corner. I won't necessarily stand in their way if they want to do it, but I still feel I want to get out there. I feel that Civic would be the better location to be doing this. Personally, that's my thought on it.
Councillor Ivanov.
I would love to have them next door to my establishment. I know that won't happen because they're going to be in the Print parking lot, but I think they're going to, I mean, even, they've had, Festivals has their events at Civic, they supply porta potties because there isn't really a bathroom. There's one bathroom there that would satisfy one person at a time. I don't think that would be, there aren't really bathrooms at Civic that are suitable for that type of an event. You have to go to the porta potties, and I'm sure they're going to do that. They're going to be required to provide a plan to AGCO before they do anything, and I would support that. As I say, I would love to have it next to my establishment. Thank you.
Thanks for that plug. Councillor White.
I stand with Councillor Owens on this, that I do not understand why our 100th anniversary would not be celebrating a facility that is so beautiful, so brand new, to everybody that's coming home. I mean, you can drive by it, you know, I understand that, but it is something that should be promoted throughout the 100th year. that this is something that we've invested in. This is a real asset to Kirkland Lake. Again, majority rules, so be it. But I really, really think that the civic lot would be just the best place to have as many events as possible.
Any, Sue, would you like to speak on behalf of the committee?
I was hoping I wouldn't have to come up and discuss the Civic, but I will. This little Prin beer tent parking lot may sit 80 people, maybe 100. If I go to Civic and I host this for 10 days, we can sit 500 over there. And the people are not downtown. They will not be downtown, because then you're talking food trucks, events, music. So we can make this a big event at Civic, and then people are not coming downtown. Or we can just make this a small meet and greet, just as a little reminiscing of when we did the KLCVI ones, that, like I said, at least the people are downtown and they'll be walking, as we have a lot of things planned for downtown besides just this little Prin beer tent. I would really like to see the town support this little idea. Like I said, it's, I'm not trying to hurt the businesses. I'm really trying to just host another extra event. The money's not coming to the committee. The money will go directly to all the service clubs that have already come on board, and I'm hoping that many others that'll fill those days that we're trying to fill. I think there's a huge misunderstanding here on this issue that I consider small. I know that it's not private property the way it was last time it was run. I get that. This is a town-owned lot. I understand that. I went and addressed the issue of the 3 parking spots that the town thought the taxi cab owned. I went and spoke to Marcel. He has not parked there since last fall. He is not even, it's not even a consideration. So I have the property right up to, the town property goes right up to that metal fencing. Yeah. I think, I wish I could speak to the individual commercial owners. I have asked them to come and speak to me. They have not. Again, I think we have a lot of people coming into town, and this tiny 80-person seating or 100-person seating area, if you throw us to Civic to do this event, yeah, then we're hurting people. Then we're hurting businesses, I think. They will, because then we're bringing in food and music and making it a night event.
Yeah, Sue, you brought up a good point too, that it's the different service clubs that are going to lack of better words, run these different events, different nights. The service club's money goes right back into the community, so it's not money going out of town.
That's right. That's
So-
correct. Yep. They're all local clubs.
Yep. Councillor.
Like
we'll
I
go
said,
with Casey.
with all due respect, like I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying I'm going to stand in the way of you being able to have your tent at that location. I just still personally feel that Civic. I respect your opinion on it. You're entitled to your opinion. Like Councillor White said, it's a democracy. I will probably vote in favor of it, but I just still think that Civic is a better location for it.
Councillor Ivanov?
I still see the opportunity for the businesses downtown, and I think, I know that we have a lot of people downtown that businesses are questionable. It would be certainly good for them to have that traffic downtown. I think the people that are complaining the most are the ones who are gonna benefit the most. I think it's sad that they don't see the opportunity. I wish you'd do it down in the old Legion parking lot next to my place. Thank you.
It may end up there.
Any further comments, questions?
Moved by Councillor Rick Owen, seconded by Councillor Dennis Perrier, that council approves in principle the use and closure of the municipal parking lot at 1 Government Road West from June 24th to July 6, 2019, to allow hosting of the Prin Beer Tent, conditional on approval by the Alcohol and Gaming Association of Ontario.
All in favor? Opposed? One?
Still passed.
Passed. Thanks, Sue.
I'm out.
Okay, introduction, reading, and consideration of bylaws.
It's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Stacy White, that bylaw 19-041, being a bylaw to authorize mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry for airport hangar space, be read a first, second, third time, and acted and passed.
All in favor? Unanimous.
It's moved by
Passed.
Councillor Stacy White, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens, that bylaw 19-042, being a bylaw to name members to committees of council, adding Mandy Whedon to Northern College Campus Committee and removing Gord Sinclair from the Economic Development Committee, be read a first, second, and third time and acted and passed.
All in favor?
It's moved by
Just to mention, Mr. Sinclair is relocating to Sudbury with the Tim Hortons franchise. We certainly will miss him. Did a lot in the community.
It's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Stacy White, that bylaw 19-043, being a bylaw to authorize mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with Turtle Island Protective Services for bylaw enforcement services, be read a first, second, and third time and acted and passed.
All in favor? Passed. Unanimous.
It's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Stacy White, that bylaw 19-044, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 18-143, or 147, sorry, to set the 2019-2020 Parks and Recreation user fees, be read a first, second, and third time and acted and passed.
All in favor? Unanimous.
It's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Stacy White, that bylaw 19-045, being a bylaw to regulate taxi cabs in the town of Kirkland Lake and repealing the Kirkland Lake Police Services Board bylaw 09001 and all amending bylaws, be read a first, second, and third time and acted and passed.
All in favor? Passed. No questions from councillor to staff. Notice of motion, Patrick Adams.
Yep, pretty much how it's put out there. I think it's a great idea to try and bring back the master fire plan and bring that back on like a scheduled basis so that we can bring it back, we can talk about it, see where it's at with its implementation, biannually or quarterly. Maybe that's the conversation we can have now to clarify it before it's all done. But certainly the recommendations that come during guides to councilors are pretty much when you do ask for reports that you do are specific to it so that you, when you get it back, you kind of know. So to have the recommendations laid out before us, the percentage of completion and what next steps are, and certainly as council we can decide. So as a report that taxpayers spent money on to get done, I think it's good that we bring it back and have it be reviewed on a quarterly or biannual basis so we can see and track its implementation measures.
If I may comment, Councillor Adams, I agree with what you're saying. In the report, it was required council acceptance of the report. Quite honestly, it was never done. There's budgetary implications with the within that report, and quite honestly, the previous council, we didn't give any direction to the fire department, and I think we have to get back into that discussion mode, like you said, and give direction to the fire department as to what we expect to be done, because there's a number of things in there that we do not necessarily have to accept and have to figure out what the budget implications are. So hopefully Rob can bring some up-to-date information on progress on what we have done for discussion next week or next council meeting. Confirmation bylaw?
It's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Stacy White, that bylaw 19-046, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held April 16th, 2019, be read a first, second, and third time enacted and passed.
All in favor? Unanimous. Councillors' reports. Councillor Owens?
Yes, I got the opportunity last Thursday, I believe, with Joanne to go to École Assomption and École Jean Vanier to hand out the centennial coins. It went really well. The kids seemed to really enjoy receiving these gold coins that were produced in Kirkland Lake. The video was a success that went really well, especially with the younger kids. Made me appreciate I don't teach elementary school, but it went fairly well.
Thank you. Councillor Owens?
Yes, Councillor Dennis and myself attended the Kirkland Lake Minor Hockey Association banquet, and it was nice to see the kids and the excitement and the giving out of the awards. A special highlight of this year's banquet was that Catherine Perkins had, along with her husband, had come up from Colorado to attend the banquet. And for those who don't know, Catherine Perkins' son, Frank, was an elite hockey player who went on to play professional hockey in the United States. He never made it to the NHL. He died and when he the last year, or last, I think, few years that he played, he was a player coach. He was respected by his peers and by the owners of the team. And sometimes elite athletes can develop a certain type of heart disease. I can't remember the details now. And he died at a young age. And when that happened, Catherine, I spent quite a bit of time with Catherine because I ran into her at Tim Hortons the next day too. Lee Cox was in town at the time and good friends, and he suggested they set up a bursary fund that would go to a graduating Pee Wee hockey player each year. And that was done both here and in Pueblo, Colorado. And the neat thing was that this started in the 90s, and Catherine had brought her scrapbook. I know for many years my wife would send her down the pictures out of the Northern News of all the winners of that award. So it was really special, and you know, for a lady that is in her 80s, she certainly is still getting around and very healthy.
Thank you. I attended the Legion Memorial and recognition for members of the Canadian Legion with Councillor Stacy White. Very enjoyable evening. They put on a great meal, but it was interesting to see their involvement in the community. And I think, as Stacy and I were talking about this earlier, under the leadership they have right now, they're certainly on the comeback trail with memberships. And it's nice to see, because the Legion plays a big part in our community. So congratulations to all those people that received recognition. And thanks for letting us attend. It was a very enjoyable night. Stacy?
Some of the numbers that they quoted with their donations and the Catch the Ace, I believe it was $38,000 that they have awarded out. And they had a very successful food drive for Salvation Army with over a ton of food and $750 in donations towards the Salvation Army specifically. So it was really incredible to hear all the good work that Legion Branch 87 is doing within our community across the board. So it was really brilliant. Good night.
Agree. Adjournment?
It's moved by Councillor Casey Owens, seconded by Councillor Stacy White. The council adjourns its regular meeting of April 16th, 2019.
All in favor? Thank you for your patience while we went around the circle a couple of times.